of being encased and buried in a worldwide flood, a catastrophic flood only several thousand years ago. All this agrees with the evidence for the young age of oil and coal that we've already seen, and clearly is consistent with the view that the varied life forms found in nature originated with the supernatural events of Creation Week only about 6,000 years ago.
At this point, many may wonder how this startling summation can be reconciled with the evolutionary view of Earth history. They may ask, do we not know from radiometric dating that Earth's basement rocks, the granites, formed repeatedly at different times and places over billions of years of evolutionary time? And do we not know that using these same methods that the fossils and sedimentary rocks are hundreds of millions of years old?
The answer is a clear-cut no to both questions. Neither granites nor fossils have ages stamped on them when they are collected. The ancient radiometric ages that scientists have accepted for so long have never been scientific facts. Factual scientific information is derived from laboratory experiments. Radiometric age dating is really just an arithmetic calculation. It is composed of a laboratory measurement, the amount of lead divided by the amount of uranium. Both of these are ascertained in the laboratory. The other variable is supposedly a constant. It assumes a constant decay rate. The age is then calculated as the product of that constant times the ratio. Only the ratio is measured in the laboratory. If this constant here is really not a constant but a variable, then the age is meaningless, and the radiometric ages are just so much radiometric fiction.
Evolution assumes granites formed by slow cooling over billions of years. The time of cooling, or presumed age, is obtained by measuring the present radioactive decay products in the granite and assuming they accumulated only by slow, constant radioactive decay. Because evolution equates radioactive age with the time of cooling, any evidence showing granites formed rapidly essentially shows their simultaneous creation. Thus, the premise of constant radioactive decay and the inference of great age is invalidated.
And indeed, there is scientific evidence for their simultaneous creation. Etched within the granites are beautiful microspheres of coloration produced by the decay of a certain radioactive element known to have only a fleeting existence. Using a simple analogy, Alka-Seltzer bubbles in water can be retained only by rapid freezing. Similarly, the microscopic record of fleeting radioactive decay in the granites is there only because these rocks were instantly created in solid form. If these rocks had formed by slow cooling, as evolution claims, the radioactive traces would have disappeared in the melt without leaving any visible record. This record of instantaneous creation is found in granites worldwide. Moreover, its existence in granites of vastly different radiometric ages shows they were all created at the same time. This collapses the whole foundation of geologic time. The hundreds of millions of years of cooling time that geologists have thought necessary to form the giant monolith El Capitan is reduced to less than a few minutes. How does this creation evidence impact on the age of the Earth? Very significantly. Simultaneous creation of different granites tells us that the various radiometric ages are in error. Something is wrong. Earlier we found there was only one uncertainty in radiometric age calculations. That uncertainty was the assumption of a uniform decay rate. Now we know that there was a change in the decay rate sometime in the past. My view is that indeed at the time of the flood, there was a vast change, an increase in the radiometric decay rate. Radioactivity then cannot be used for age dating until after the end of the decay rate change. Any effort to use radioactivity for age dating prior to that time is certainly to end with an erroneous result. Other evidence relating to the decay rate change and a young age of the Earth comes from my studies of granite cores taken from a deep drill hole in New Mexico. In the 1970s, the Department of Energy drilled a deep hole down to around 14,000 feet for the purpose of seeing whether they could extract energy from heat deep in the earth. I obtained samples from depths of 3,148 feet down to over 14,000 feet. The purpose was to extract tiny microscopic zircons, uranium-bearing minerals, from the granites. The results of my investigations on these zircons were published in Geophysical Research Letters in 1982. The orange half circles here represent the tiny zircons in the granites at different depths. The first one at 3,148 feet at a temperature of 105 degrees centigrade. Going on down to a depth of 14,131 feet at a temperature of 313 degrees centigrade, 3 times the boiling point of water. Now let's assume that these zircons were filled with helium at a given time. The dots above the zircons represent how rapidly the zircons are losing helium at these various depths. Obviously, the hottest one at the greatest depth is going to lose it far more rapidly than the one at the highest depth at 3,148 feet. After a period of time has elapsed, we would expect that indeed the zircon at the nearest the surface, 3,148 feet, would still have the greater amount of helium in it. The one at the very lowest depth, at the highest temperature, would now have the smaller amount of helium, very small. This last chart shows the actual experimental results, that we haven't found any helium whatsoever in the zircons at the greatest depths. We did find some at the first 3 depths, down to 197 degrees centigrade. Let's stop just for a moment and see if we can understand what was going on. Helium was being generated as uranium was decaying in these zircons. So the amount of helium in these zircons at various depths tells us something about the time at which the granite has been in existence at this particular temperature. The actual physical experimental results are shown now in the next chart. They're only meaningful as we make a comparison between what we would expect to find if indeed the Earth was 4.5 billion years old. On the left we see the amount expected if the Earth was 4.5 billion years old. Only a very, very small amount. What we have pictured here is really a guesstimate, an approximation. There are so many variables relating to something supposedly that far back that we can't be very, very precise. We do know, however, it would only be a very, very small amount because helium, this decay product of uranium, escapes very rapidly the higher the temperature is. What we actually found, however, in the experiments was helium in the zircons diminishing, 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 but still there at a temperature of 197 degrees centigrade. The weight of the scientific evidence has brought us to the collapse of evolutionary time. There is a young Earth creation time scale. The radiometric ages of the granites, stretching from 80 million to 4 billion years, is invalid. These granites, from Yosemite to the basement rocks of the Grand Canyon, to Japan and India, to the granites of Europe and Russia and Canada, were all the product of a simultaneous creation. We haven't proved that the Earth is 6,000 years old, but we have found evidence that is consistent with a 6,000-year age of the Earth. And we have shown that a several billion-year age of the Earth is scientifically incorrect.
We've captured only a brief glimpse of the various lines of scientific evidence that point to the truth and accuracy of the biblical record of Earth's recent creation and the Great Flood. Brief though our glimpse has been, the conclusion has been certain. The radioactive traces in coalified wood collapse the geological timescale for life on Earth from hundreds of millions of years to just thousands. The occurrence of the worldwide flood explains the rapid accumulation of vegetation responsible for Earth's vast coal and oil reserves. The young age of coal